Darlin Gentry always attracted attention with her stunning appearance. Her bright hair and radiant, wide smile created a memorable image. In school, she earned the title of prom queen and was often compared to Barbie. Darlin was a sociable person who always found herself in the spotlight. She was popular among her classmates and was surrounded by a large number of admirers. After graduating from high school, Darlin enrolled at Texas State Technical College, where she chose to study as a dental assistant. It was there that she met Kit, who was studying welding design. A romance blossomed between the young couple, and they were considered the most attractive pair in college. As graduation approached, Darlin eagerly awaited a proposal from Kit, but he wasn't ready for marriage, and their paths diverged. Eventually, Darlin moved to Dallas, where she got a job at a dental clinic. However, after her car was stolen, she decided to return to her hometown. During this time, Kit had not forgotten about her and missed her deeply. Upon learning of Darlin's return, he visited her with a proposal to rekindle their relationship. She agreed, as her feelings for him remained strong. In 1999, Kit proposed and the couple got married. Soon after their wedding, they welcomed 3 sons into the world, and despite the challenges of motherhood, Darlin continued to take care of herself, always looking attractive. Kit earned a good income, and she had no shortage of funds for shopping. However, dissatisfied with her job as a dental assistant, Darlin decided to change professions and took a part-time position as a school nurse. Kit was often away on business trips, so Darlin took on most of the household duties and child-rearing responsibilities. Despite all the difficulties, she always kept a smile on her face, and their marriage seemed strong. Understanding that Darlin was struggling, Kit found work closer to home to spend more time with the family and support his wife. However, the new position turned out to be less lucrative, so Darlin's opportunities for luxury significantly narrowed. She appeared to ignore the financial difficulties and continued making expensive purchases on credit, leading to a growing amount of debt. Kit repeatedly urged his wife to be more careful with spending until he found a new job, but her reaction to these comments remained indifferent. As a result, their arguments became more frequent. On November 5, 2005, around 6 a.m., 31-year-old Darlin Gentry called 911 and reported that upon waking up, she found that their home had been broken into while the children were sleeping. The back door was found to be open. "I don't have any weapons at home. They were stolen. My husband is lying on the bed, and pink foam is coming from his mouth," she said. Police quickly arrived at the scene, while Darlin continued to communicate with the 911 operator. The operator tried to instruct her on how to perform first aid on her husband, but Darlin only gasped, showing no effort to save Kit. 31-year-old Kit Gentry had sustained a gunshot wound to the head. Although he was unconscious, he could still be saved, and he was rushed to the nearest hospital, where he was connected to life support. The incident shocked the local community. People could not understand who would want to harm a loving father of 3 children. Police searched the house and found no signs of a break-in. Kit's gun safe remained untouched, as it was open with a key. There were no signs of broken locks or glass on the doors or windows. The weapon was found neatly arranged outside the home, which also raised suspicions. The police realized that the situation appeared suspicious, so they took samples from Darlin's hands for gunpowder residue and invited her for questioning, to which she agreed. During the interrogation, Darlin stated that the evening before, she had spent time with friends and, upon returning home at 8:30 p.m., had an argument with her husband regarding credit card debts. In order to calm down, she went out for a walk but later returned to Kit, and they made up. Since the children were sick, Darlin stayed to sleep with them in the children's room, while Kit remained alone in the bedroom. After some time, the woman woke up feeling cold in the house, and upon checking where the cold was coming from, discovered that the back door was open and Kit's gun safe was empty. Entering the bedroom, she saw her husband lying face down, pink foam coming from his mouth, and blood flowing from his head. She urgently called emergency services. Investigators were alarmed that, as a nurse, the woman made no attempt to help her husband in this critical situation. Even during the conversation with the 911 operator, who was giving her instructions, Darlin showed no initiative. She spoke too calmly, as if feeling no anxiety, starting her account not with a plea for help, but with a description of the events leading up to the incident. Investigators noted her explanations as unusual. Darlin justified her behavior by saying she was in shock and was only thinking about the children. However, while at the police station, she never once asked about Kit's condition. During the interrogation, investigators informed her that her husband's brain had died. Darlin Gentry was taken to the hospital, where she signed a consent form to disconnect Kit from life support. During this time, police closely monitored her behavior and noticed that, despite the tears she wiped away, her emotional state remained quite calm. That same day, the interrogation continued, and investigators began to press Darlin, hoping to obtain a confession to the crime. She realized their intentions were not pure, so she exercised her right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment, as well as her right to counsel under the Sixth Amendment. This forced the police to stop the interrogation, and Darlin was released, after which she consulted with a lawyer. Meanwhile, investigators continued their investigation, compiling a list of weapons, discovering that a .22 caliber pistol, a gift from Kit's father, was missing. The forensic examination confirmed that Kit was killed with that very pistol. Darlin granted permission for a search of her home, and during this search, police found a pair of latex gloves and a .22 caliber bullet casing in the kitchen garbage can. All these items were sent for forensic analysis, which confirmed that gunshot residue and DNA from both Darlin and Kit were found on the gloves. The casing was also found to be compatible with the bullet. Darlin's fingerprints were discovered on one pistol, while the others bore no prints. Previously taken samples from her hands also showed traces of gunpowder. It turned out that Kit had a life insurance policy worth $750,000, which could have served as a motive for the crime, as Darlin needed money. 19 days after the tragedy, Darlin was charged with murder. She was arrested and placed in jail, but her stay there was short-lived. No one could believe in her involvement in this crime. Kit's parents, who had always treated Darlin with love, were convinced that she could not harm their son. After the incident, she lived with the children in her in-laws' home, who took care of her and their grandchildren. When Kit's parents learned of her arrest, they decided to post a $50,000 bail, which led to Darlin's release. After that, she moved back in with her husband's parents. Police often visited Darlin, questioning her, and her patience wore thin. She stopped opening the door, sending them away. Leaving the children with Kit's parents, she moved in with one of Kit's sisters, hoping that the investigators' attention would lessen. In exploring the relationship between Darlin and Kit, investigators discovered that Kit deeply loved his family and had left his well-paying job in a hated position to spend more time with them. He was also troubled that his wife was not actively involved in raising their children, constantly leaving them in the care of her in-laws, who lived nearby. At the time all this was happening, Darlin was spending time shopping and at beauty salons. However, Kit continued to assure his parents, "I will never leave Darlin. I love her very much, and she needs to leave me." Kit's brother noted that his sister-in-law had never experienced true happiness. She avoided the comforts of home, while Kit wanted to spend more time with his family. He wanted to be there to bathe the children, put them to bed, and was the perfect father, playing soccer with them and wrestling. They were happy together. Despite the active efforts of the police in their investigation, no new suspects emerged. Kit had a good reputation, had no enemies, and no one wished him harm. Darlin, feeling the weight of suspicion and realizing that the detectives were aware of the insurance payout, refrained from contacting the insurance company for money. She was confident she would be exonerated in court, as she looked young, attractive, and did not appear to be a criminal at all. The prosecutors had only circumstantial evidence and assumptions. Meanwhile, Darlin felt uncomfortable living with Kit's relatives and turned to a realtor she knew, Robert Pavelko. He was aware of the tragedy that had befallen their family and was surprised that Darlin approached him specifically. He was even more astonished when she proposed demolishing her house with a bulldozer, claiming that it was associated with bad memories. Robert explained that destroying a nice home was not the best idea and suggested that she consider moving to a new place. She was taken with this idea since Kit had always dreamed of a house by a pond where the children could go fishing. However, a week later, Darlin called Robert asking him to fill in the pond. This raised his suspicions, and he reported her intentions to the police. Investigators found the situation strange and suspected that she might have discarded the gun in the pond and was now trying to conceal it forever. Divers who arrived on the scene found the very same gun just 15 minutes later. The weapon was sent for forensic analysis, but Darlin was unaware of this. To catch her in the act, the police contacted Robert, asking him to coordinate their efforts. He told her that the pond was scheduled to be drained before it was filled in and inquired when this would take place. Darlin, concerned, asked when the draining would begin and was told it would happen in 2 days. During this time, 2 detectives hid behind bushes near the pond with cameras, waiting for her reaction. Sensing the threat of exposure, Darlin made her way to the pond. The video recorded her as she approached the water in jeans and a sweater with high boots, looking around to make sure no one was watching, and entering the pond, heading toward the spot where the gun had been found earlier. She searched for the weapon for several minutes, but to no avail. Frustrated, she left the pond and drove away. In court during the trial, prosecutors focused on her behavior after Kit's death. All the circumstantial evidence and testimony were presented. The prosecution argued that Darlin committed the crime to cover her expenses, as she was in urgent need of money. Her debts were piling up, and she realized that the $750,000 insurance policy could solve all her problems. Darlin insisted on her innocence to everyone. When the court showed the video in which she searched for the gun in the pond, she explained that she had heard rumors about a gun being planted there by the real criminal and decided to find it first so that the police could not accuse her. Her request to exclude this recording from the trial was denied. The jurors, after 5 hours of deliberation, unanimously found her guilty. The court sentenced her to 60 years in prison with the possibility of parole in 2037. Kit's parents were granted custody of the 3 grandchildren, and Darlin was prohibited from contacting the children. As of today, 47-year-old Darlin Gentry continues to assert her innocence, even though several of her appeals have been denied. This story reminds us of the thin line between love and hate, and how life's circumstances can change us. Kit, with all his devotion and love for his family, unfortunately found himself trapped in a situation with no way out. At the same time, Darlin, in her struggle for her own interests, became a victim of her decisions and actions, which led to tragic consequences. This demonstrates how important it is to maintain honesty and kindness in relationships, as even the slightest betrayal or deception can lead to disaster. The moral of this story lies in the importance of being aware of the responsibility for our actions and the consequences they may have for those close to us. One should never place their own interests above the well-being of those around them. Our story about Darlin and Kit serves as a warning that life can change quickly if we are not careful in our decisions. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to learn more exciting detective stories that I uncover for you. And feel free to share your thoughts on this story in the comments. I'm curious to hear your opinion.